So we're in unprecedented times at the moment. The COVID-19 situation has changed the sporting landscape immeasurably. No footy at the moment in the AFL and in the community leagues as well, but there's been plenty happening behind the scenes from all community leagues, AFL Victoria, and of course the state and federal governments. Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier, recently announced stage one of the easing of the COVID-19 restrictions. There'll be a couple more stages to follow. What does that mean for community footy? We'll soon find out in the coming days. I'm lucky enough to be joined by the CEO of the Southern Football Netball League, Lee Hartman. Joins us on the line. Lee, thanks for joining me, mate. Busy couple of days for you.
G'day, Will. Yeah, no, good to be here. No, it's been a pretty busy couple of months, to be honest, trying to work out what's going on, what we can do and can't do. We're still in the dark with a lot of things. Unlike most of the other states where they've got the stage 2 and 3 dates already, we're still waiting for those. And it looks like we won't get those dates until June the 1st. So at this stage, we've put out a recommendation to clubs that we're not sanctioning training. Our initial correspondence way back at the end of March was that there'd be no playing or training before May 31st anyway. So this still runs in line with that. But we're working behind the scenes with the AFL, Sport and Rec Victoria and the state government on when we can return and what that looks like and the protocols around that.
Of course, and yesterday some in-depth meetings with all the other community competitions at AFL Vic. What were some of the topics discussed, and what have we sort of landed on after that?
Yeah, look, it's good that the 6 senior metro leagues and the 2 junior metro leagues, we're all working together. We all want to do the same thing around returning to train, returning to play, what that looks like. So we're working very well together, obviously supported by AFL Victoria and the AFL in those discussions. So at this stage, we're getting the information fed through to us. We're asking plenty of questions ourselves, just like our clubs and participants are of us. So we're trying to gather the information. But the key thing is the dates. We've been working towards a few scenarios depending on the dates. We've also approached, or when I say we, AFL have approached Cricket Victoria to talk about October as well. That's a possibility. So there's plenty of models going on. Then you've got the financial impact around crowds. What a limited season would cost clubs and participants to play as well. So there's plenty happening.
There's a lot of different layers to this, of course, and we'll sort of unpack a couple of these as we go along. Firstly, what's the key thing for training? As you mentioned earlier, there's a memo that was put out in terms of a return to training. No sanctioned training until the proper return to training protocols are sort of put in place. What are some of the key things that need to happen before that's then put in place and allow clubs to have properly sanctioned training?
Well, as you know, the government's announced that groups of 10 can get back together. So that's the first step. The next step is groups of 20. Then the third step is groups of 100 and returning to play. So we're trying to unpack that now, what that happens. The other states that have already gone back or going back to training in the next week or so, they've got some dates to work towards, as I mentioned. We're trying to understand what that group of 10 looks like. Is it 10 per venue? Is it 10 groups of 10 that can, use the vast expanses of an AFL ground, 3, 4 groups of 10 on one venue, or is it just 10? So we've got plenty of questions around that, and the protocols need to include all that. So clubs are very clear on what needs to happen. There will be some, measures put in place in those protocols around cleaning, social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. So until we actually see them and get them signed off by ourselves and local government, because we are using their facilities, that's really what we need to do first, because we've got to make sure it's not too onerous at the end of the day as well. It's already hard enough on the volunteers to get footy clubs and netball clubs up and running. So we've just got to make sure, 1, it's safe, but 2, it's not too onerous. So it will be a fine line.
Yeah, that's true. And I think by and large, we as a society have been all right at sort of trying to manage it and the social distancing and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully that can continue. We can sort of get that off the ground. I suppose the key question for you, and I think it's the one that's on everyone's lips, how confident are you as a Chief Executive Officer of a community footy competition, and netball, of course, that we're going to get a season underway sometime in 2020?
Yeah, look, I think there'll be an opportunity to play games, both football and netball. I don't think that will be a question. The question will be whether it's viable to do so, and that will come back to the answers we're seeking around start dates, around crowd sizes, around revenue opportunities and streams for clubs. As you probably know, we've slashed the salary caps with the 9-game season. That'll be slashed by 75%. We've been able to do a deal with the umpires to reduce their pays to help clubs there. So we're looking at ways where we can save clubs money, but at the end of the day, there still will be some costs. So for their crowds, for social events, even their canteens, their bars, the clubs that do run gates, it may become too difficult. So look, we're confident we can play games. It's just whether the clubs want to go down that path once we have all the facts, which we don't have at the moment.
Bit of a wait and see at the moment, but of course, in terms of a season start, obviously we're waiting on cricket to hopefully come to the party and the councils as well in terms of being able to get crowns. Has there been any chat, within the SFNL or in the broader footy circles in terms of a sort of cut-off date in which, getting a season underway by a certain date might not, if it's too late, won't go ahead? Is there a sort of cut-off date that makes a season start unfeasible?
Yeah, look, there probably is, and we're working towards that. The clubs have told us to have a meaningful season in each division. They'd like to play each other at least once, which we understand. So if you work on that, the top division's playing, 9 home and away games. If cricket doesn't come to the party and we have to finish by September, we're probably looking at a first or second weekend in July start to fit that in. If we didn't have finals, that's another question we've posed to the clubs. If we just had a home and away season more for the social welfare of the players rather than the ultimate prize, is that something we should be considering as well? If cricket allow us to go into October, which would be a fantastic result, that would traditionally be our September finals time. So we wouldn't need all 30 venues. We'd only need probably a handful, 4 or 5 venues to run the final. So if that's the case, we could go pretty much to the end of July, start of August for a start date. But once again, it's going to come back to those parameters around crowds and revenue raising and those types of things.
Yep, absolutely. What sort of impact will a crowdless SFNL competition have in terms of? We'll start off with the club's bottom line first of all. What sort of impact will that have from the clubs? Obviously, a lot of clubs reliant not necessarily on gates, as quite a few of the teams don't have fenced off venues, but in terms of canteen sales, bar sales, it's actually quite important for the health of a community footy club's bottom line. What sort of impact will that have from a club point of view, do you think?
Yeah, look, it'll have a massive impost on the clubs. We still need to obviously charge them for things like umpires and footballs and those sorts of things. So there still will be costs to them. So they need to generate some revenue. I'm hearing some club sponsors are stuck by them, which is fantastic, but they do really rely on that community, spend each week to help raise that revenue as well. And it's not just at the games; it's post games, social functions, raffles, those sorts of things. So it's very important for clubs to have crowds there. If we're not allowed to have crowds or the crowds are limited, we'll obviously have to make a call from what we know about that.
Yep, and that will obviously have a big impact on the league as a whole, given the reliance on gate takings from the finals venues. If there's no crowds, it'll have a big impact on you guys as well.
Yeah, we're no different from the clubs. We rely on sponsors, the affiliation costs. We charge the clubs to be part of the competition. We have to raise revenue as well. We're in a fortunate position at the moment with the JobKeeper. We've been able to keep our staff on a couple of days a week, but that'll dry up in September as well. So if we don't have a season, the league needs to make some decisions as well. Recently, as our clubs are aware, we invested heavily into RSEA Park, so our cash flow has dried up because of that. That's given us 25 years of lease at RSEA Park, so it was a good investment. But the time we made it, in the last 18 months, so it has drained us a bit. But look, we're no different from the clubs. We need to get seasons up and running as well, and that's what hopefully will happen.
It's not only an industry-wide issue; it's an all-of-society thing. So it's one of those things where we're all in it together. It doesn't matter what business or industry you're in. In terms of the structure of the season, what sort of impact have the clubs had, or input, I should say, in terms of giving their feedback as to what this season will probably look like?
Yeah, as I mentioned, every club to a man has said that we want to play each other at least once for a meaningful season. So that's probably the first starting point. And the second thing is around I suppose, the health and welfare of the players, participants, and volunteers. That's got to be critical as well, and that's why the return to play and train protocols will be very important. We've currently got a survey out to our clubs, which is due in next Monday, which asks some questions around, home and away seasons with our finals. If we did our finals, what that would look like, and other questions around netball. We've got the ability to run netball into the summer because those courts are available on Saturday afternoons post September and October, so we'll look at that as well. So there's several questions out to clubs at the moment. As I said, it's due Monday. We'll get some more information from the clubs. The boards obviously will ultimately make those decisions, but the clubs have been very supportive. They're all telling us they do want to play. How that looks, we're not too sure.
Has there been any reluctance from clubs, or a little bit of hesitation from certain members within clubs about getting the season underway in terms of a health and safety point of view? Have you had any feedback suggesting that it might not be a great idea to sort of go ahead and maybe scrap it entirely for 2020? Have you got that sort of feedback at all, or has it been overwhelmingly positive?
The scrapping it totally comes back to that revenue stuff, and that's where the crowds will play a big part. But overall, they've been very supportive. Some have mentioned that their reserves or thirds might struggle depending on guys coming back. If work's available, they may need to work on a Saturday now. People that have had restricted work, even paid players and seniors now that salary cap's been slashed, they may be able to earn more working, those sorts of things. So until we actually get back training, it's probably hard to answer those questions, but they're all keen to play. They're all keen to be part of the competition. There isn't one club that has put their hand up and said we're definitely out. It'll come back to those protocols and how it looks.
Is there any, fears from League HQ about the viability of some clubs given this current climate and not the threat of not being able to get a season up? I mean, you indicated earlier that all clubs have suggested that they will continue in 2021, but is there any clubs that you've sort of got your eye on a little bit in terms of a little danger that they might struggle to continue, particularly with cash flow and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we recently, the board undertook a project 2 weeks ago to ring every club and have a discussion around that. And each one has come back and said that, no, 2021, they will be around, they're keen to get going. Obviously with our player payments and things, some clubs are actually saving some money, but there's still some outgoings. Most councils are trying to look after the clubs with rent and utilities and those sorts of things. But every club said they would come back. But they need to work through that and see what that actually looks like. But yeah, we're pretty keen, obviously, to support clubs. The state government's just announced today that there's a $40 million pool for community sport and recreation clubs to apply for to, in their words, keep the lights on. So that'll be interesting. We're trying to find out what that looks like. How do you apply for that as well? So there will be some support for clubs and leagues. We just need to work through that a bit more and see what that looks like.
Yeah, terrific that the board's taken a proactive approach in trying to help the clubs as well. And what sort of job have you guys been doing in the back office to help sort of facilitate relationships between councils and clubs to be able to sort of lessen the burden from council fees and that sort of thing? Is that something that you guys have been actively helping facilitate?
Yeah, look, we've had those discussions both at state level and also local government level. We're keeping them updated. So yeah, look, we're trying to work through those issues. As you may know, in the Southern Footy Netball League, we deal with 11 different councils, so they're not all the same. Some have different opinions. Some came straight out and supported the clubs with fees. Some are still working through that. Some have given them a couple of months, etc. So each one's different. But yeah, behind the scenes, we're working closely with, as I mentioned before, the 8 Metro Leagues working closely together, AFL Victoria, the AFL Sport and Rec Victoria, and local government. So there's plenty of layers to it. And everyone wants to be happy when the decisions are made, which isn't always the case as well. But yeah, as soon as decisions are made and we're able to make the decisions, and look, the next decision is going to come when the next set of dates are released for the next, easing of restrictions. So we're sort of in government's hands at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope for people watching this, they sort of get a bit of an understanding of the depth of the task at hand that you guys in the back office sort of have to undertake to sort of help navigate through this situation. So with a bit of luck that a lot of people will have a look at it and have a better appreciation for the hard work that you guys in the office put in. a lot of the focus has been on senior footy, but from your point of view, what are sort of the next steps with regards to under 19s and thirds and women's as well? Are they all in the same boat? Have you heard anything from clubs about interests and potential numbers in that space? Because the fixtures hadn't been released for those competitions prior to obviously the COVID-19 shutdown. What's the latest in that space for those comps?
Yeah, we've asked the clubs are part of the survey that's out at the moment. We are hearing that there might be some thirds or seconds teams that might struggle to get all their players back, but the women's are keen. The under 19s is an interesting one. We put a lot of focus on the under 19s in the off season with the reduction of fees and some points concessions, etc. We went from 7 teams in 2019 to 12 teams we were going to have in 2020. So it'll be interesting to see what players actually come back and what teams have put up. But we're heading in the right direction with the 19s. But look, once we get the dates, we'll be opening up every competition that we started with. We'll get the answers from the clubs. It may be a situation where, you know, it's a possibility to play the reserves or third fixture will be different to the seniors fixture, just to get some games going. But that'll be all done in the next sort of month, I would say.
Plenty to look forward to, and hopefully we can get some good news on that front for all the players that are looking to play in those competitions. And netball, of course, you said there's the opportunity to play further into the summer. Obviously, no cricket conflicts. What's been the I guess the latest with netball Victoria in that space?
Yeah, Netball Victoria, I should say, are working on their protocols as well around training. Because once again, the 10 at a venue, as you know, down at Springvale Districts, we have multiple courts there, and over at the other venue in Doveton, we have several courts there as well. So whether it's 10 on one venue or 10 per court, we're trying to work that out. Netball Victoria is hitting up the state government about that. So those protocols will be released. But yes, we can go past the traditional footy season with netball. It is on our radar to start a summer netball competition into the future. Most of the Metro senior leagues and some of the country leagues are now running summer netball as well. So that was always on our agenda, but it's going to come back to, can clubs facilitate that? Can the participants go into October? You know, they might have other commitments. So this year, last year we had 100 netball teams. This year I think we had 110 slated, but you know, we're going in summer, that may reduce to 70 or 80 teams, and the summer comp may see the same. So we're pretty flexible on netball. We've got a lot more flexibility with that than we do with footy, because we don't share the venues with another sport.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little bit of an easier task than getting the footy up and going. So yeah, hopefully we can.
Also, netball can start pretty much overnight, where footy obviously would like a 2 or 3 week training lead in, you know, a bit of fitness back and those sorts of things. But the netball girls, yeah, from what we're hearing, they could start pretty much in a week or 2 once we get given the green light.
Yep, for sure. And of course, how are you tracking, mate? I mean, I said off the top, it's been a busy couple of days and certainly a busy few weeks for you as well. How are you tracking with everything, mate? You well?
Yeah, not too bad. As you can see, I'm sitting in my kitchen here. This is pretty much my office at the moment. But yeah, look, it has been tough for the staff. We've been at home. St Kilda shut down pretty quick at RSEA Park there. I think it was March 16. We all got our marching orders, so it's 9 or 10 weeks we've been at home. We were hoping that the government allowed people to return to work in the announcements on Monday. That didn't happen, so maybe June 1. But then we've got the other obstacle of St Kilda are training there, if that is a total lockdown facility or not, whether we can return. So we'll be at least 3 more weeks at home till June the 1st, and post that we'll be working with St Kilda Footy Club on what we can and can't do there as well. But look, we're going all right. The staff, as our clubs know, the staff are back to 2 days a week. They're still doing some work, working on a few little projects, especially around fixturing and those sorts of things, what that could look like. But they're hanging in there. We have our weekly Zoom meetings like this, and they've got plenty of banter, and it's good to share a few stories, not just about our workplace, but you know, what they're doing personally, and you know, keeping fit. And yeah, it's been good.
Obviously, with no footy, and you know, I know we're sort of still waiting for a few decisions to be made, particularly from the Victorian and federal governments. What are the most immediate priorities for you guys in the office over, say, the next sort of 7 to 14 days?
It's really to get these back to training protocols, get them, understand them, distribute them to the clubs and to the councils. make sure the councils are happy with those and the clubs can resume to at least start training. It's a bit of an unknown on when we'll start, so I might have to start training without knowing that date, which is difficult also. But the main thing over the next 2 weeks is to get that and at least set out a roadmap. I think if come June 1st, if we don't get the further dates, then it's really going to start putting some pressure on making some longer term calls on a few things. So I think the next 3 weeks is just about trying to get people back to training where possible, lifting that, I suppose, social interaction and improving that social welfare side of things, and getting back on track.
That's it, mate. And hopefully we can get some clarity on that sooner rather than later. And, you know, hopefully we can get this season up and going as well sooner rather than later. But at the moment, it just seems like a bit of a wait and see. Plenty of good things going on around the joint with you guys, and you're doing some great work in trying to get this up and going. And of course, AFL Vic and all the other metro leagues as well. So, congratulations on a job well done so far, and hopefully we can have some good news in the coming weeks with regards to footy and netball. So I appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us, Lee, and best luck for the next couple of weeks.
No worries, thanks, mate. And I'd just like to say to all our clubs and participants, we're hopeful, like you are, to get back this year, and whatever the outcome is, whether we get there or not, stick by your clubs when we can get up and running, and that is out of our hands. Make sure you do stick around your clubs, support your clubs. Let's get back for 2020 if we can. If we can't, let's bounce back bigger and better in 2021. But we know how much it means to not only the participants, but also the local community. People have been coming down to your clubs for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and that is their life, a lot of them. So without that, they're doing it tough. So we'll get back as soon as we can, and we'll give you the info as soon as it comes to hand.
Well said, Lee, and keep up the great work from you and the team.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.